Hello and welcome to the Route One show. We're taking a look at Leeds United now, and I'm delighted to say joining us is Sporting Life's Tom Carnduff. Hi, Tom.
Hiya.
Thanks for joining us again. And Leeds United, we'll start with the FA Cup. We'll kind of get that out of the way. Accrington Stanley 3-1 victory through to the next round. What did you make of it?
Yeah, perfect kind of cup performance, really. You look at fixtures like that, and there's a potential, isn't it, to be a huge banana skin. And Leeds have known more than any other club, really, in the past that you can fall victim to these. So, yeah, the ideal performance, to be honest. It was just a horrible game, and I think Accrington probably wanted that, didn't they? They knew, obviously, when it comes to the pure football, man for man, one versus one, it's not going to work in their favour, and they did it incredibly well. First half, I think the Harrison goal obviously then took a bit of the pressure off, and Accrington, as you expect, would start the better of the two sides when it's a home underdogs and things like that. So yeah, ideal performance given the circumstances, the result as well. Again, as was the case in that Cardiff replay, there's probably just that little bit of disappointment with the manner of the goal conceded at the end. But yeah, a good performance and a pretty decent enough tie considering the potential outcomes in the next round. But yeah, it's televised as well early on. It looked like it could be one of those where they'd slip up and they managed to avoid it.
I know, I can't believe it. Can't be Leeds United doing this, surely. Rutter, what did you think of his debut?
Yeah, liked it. Obviously, it's tough to kind of give full judgment, isn't it, in terms of the opponent and the competition and stuff like that. But in a way, it's almost a little bit maybe more difficult to kind of throw yourself into that environment. And yeah, looks good. I've seen kind of little bits of him when he was at Hoffenheim, watched a lot of the Bundesliga. Unfortunately, Hoffenheim aren't a team that are televised often over here, but it seems like he's going to suit the system, which we kind of knew already. Potentially, you're thinking, it could be a decent partnership with Rodrigo or whatever, but I think he'll sit nicely alongside Bamford. And whether he is playing out wide, however the system is going forward, he's definitely someone who's going to suit into it. So yeah, early signs are very good, and kind of a nice fixture also to ease him in, getting ready for was a pretty hectic Premier League schedule now.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Rodrigo there. It has been confirmed that he's out for a couple of months with an ankle injury that he sustained in that game when he came on us. So very frustrating the fact that we'd basically already won the game and he's come on and injured himself. What kind of blow is that to Leeds now, missing the top scorer?
Yeah, a big one. Obviously, I think the context maybe of. I think obviously the easy line to go to is that why did he bring him on? The game was already won. I suppose you've got to look at that squad and say, well, actually, Rutter, who we spoke about, he's not played a lot of football at all. Germany had the World Cup break. They then had an extra month for their winter break. So that's 2 months without competitive football for him. You've got to kind of ease players like that back into the flow of it rather than saying play the full 90 minutes. And obviously Sinisterra it was he came on for, who, again, his time at the club has been really hampered by injury, and he's just coming back from a lengthy layoff on the sidelines as well. You don't want to expose him to the full 90 minutes at this stage. You kind of want to see if you can get through an hour, and with a mind to obviously potentially starting at Forrest and playing a lot more minutes there. So I think it's now Rodrigo's injured. It's easy to kind of point and say they shouldn't have brought him on. Well, they've kind of also got to protect the players. If it was Sinisterra getting injured again, why didn't they take him on at the hour? Take him off at the hour. The same with Rutter. Why didn't they take him off at the hour? So it's an unfortunate one. And top scorer, he's had a fantastic season so far. Again, we've kind of spoke about Rodrigo, and doesn't feel like he fully fits the system, but he keeps scoring. So it's not a huge issue, is it? But less of an issue now than it would have been in previous seasons. It feels like Leeds have the real depth in the forward positions. Bamford's coming back from injury, has scored goals, nearly got a hat-trick of assists in that Accrington FA Cup game. And of course, Rutter's come in as well, who is a player who is naturally more central but can play out wide. So a huge blow, but definitely not what it would have been a season or so ago, where Leeds are playing wingers up front and trying to get something going. The feel that the depth is there, but he will be missed. And I suppose at least there is an international break in March to take a week off it if you want to get some positivity, and presume it'd be Arsenal away. Is it early April that we'd probably target a comeback based on the early lines? But yeah, a huge blow, and it's a shame because he's been firing. He's been found that form that has kind of eluded him at difficult circumstances that he came to the club. And I think he got COVID early on, didn't he? And things like that. So he's never truly had a real run until kind of Marsh came in and let him play more as that striker. So yeah, unfortunate for him more than anything, but if he's back for the running wherever Leeds are, then more than welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. So that 5th round awaits Leeds. It's Fulham or Sunderland. What do you think? I mean, it's another away tie, isn't it? Unbelievable. Another away draw for Leeds. Just think what an incredible run that is. How do you see that going? Who do you fancy will end up playing there?
Ooh, it's a tough one actually, because the replay's at Sunderland, isn't it? And Fulham and Sunderland scored late and it was ruled out for offside, so they kind of got away with one there. I don't know. I mean, Sunderland would be potentially more ideal, not just because they're the Championship side, but I know Ross Stewart's now got a season-ending injury. I think Joe Gelhardt will be ineligible to play. There's going to be some forward problems that they'll have for that tie, but you're always going to fancy the Premier League team in it. It just depends how Fulham approach it. I know they've made changes in their first 2 games, and Hull was fairly competitive for them. I'd prefer Fulham because Craven Cottage is one of the best grounds in the country, and any opportunity you get to go to it, you should absolutely take with both hands. But naturally, you're going to want any lower ranked team, aren't you? I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised for it to be Sunderland, given that it is at the Stadium of Light, and away again for the 12th draw in a row, is it? Which is just absolutely remarkable. Isn't ideal, so you want it to be the lower ranked team wherever possible. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see an upset on that one. It's just how Fulham approach it.
Yeah, absolutely. The transfer window, we discussed Leeds' incomings last week, Weston McKennie, etc., and they didn't really do any more business after that. But I was interested to get your take on what happened with Jack Harrison, the fact that he went up to the Leicester training ground. It all seemed a lot closer than probably we realised on the actual night. This kind of came out after. Where do you think the future for Jack Harrison stands with Leeds? Because now they're talking about a new contract, but I mean, where do you think it all stands at the moment?
I think the way I understood it is that Jack Harrison clearly wants to stay at Leeds, but is very understanding that if first team opportunities aren't there, then he can go somewhere else. And I think a competitive with Barnes, with Tete, who was accidentally linked with Leeds, wasn't he, last week, which was entertaining. And then obviously with Harrison, there'd be some kind of competitiveness, there'd be a little bit of rotation, but perhaps he'd have a little bit more of a look in at Leicester than he would currently. So I think that from the way I look at it, he's always wanted to stay. Just is a player that is understanding of the situation. I don't think he would force it through, but the fact that he's willing to sign a new contract kind of says everything about it. I think maybe the being at Leicester was overblown somewhat in terms of how people understood it. I think people were saying, oh, Leeds have done a Dan James. I don't think that was ever it. I think it must have been a case of, look, and it happens more often than you realise in transfers. Yeah. Players will, it makes sense. It makes sense. Look, this is a situation. Everyone's aware of the situation. If we can get a replacement, you may be leaving. So it makes sense for you to go to that club. Everyone's on the understanding that it could not go through, and it didn't go through. For Leeds, I think it's the best outcome. Harrison, is a depth option, is just absolutely up there. Solid Premier League player, very rarely injured as well. I think you could probably look at, was it Zaniolo from Roma, who is probably a better player when you kind of compare the two, but you just know for the role that Harrison plays, that Harrison's just better at it. You can rely on him in terms of availability, injury record and stuff like that. And you know that he can make a bit of an impact. And I think now a competitive department kind of out wide, whether wingers, wide forwards, however Leeds use them going forward, it's just going to benefit him, because being pretty much the only person on that side of the pitch for 3 seasons straight, when you're having bad kind of patches of form, you can't hide away from it. So it would just benefit him. And I think it's great that he wants to stay, and it's definitely the right move for Leeds to tie him down to a contract, because with that transfer window now, and particularly the outgoings, the squad, you're going to look at the bench, and it was kind of true at Accrington, even though they did name 2 goalkeepers, that the bench will start to look more like a squad now. The thing with Leeds is the starting 11 has never been overly bad. It's just the depth beyond that, and the amount of times you've seen a bench of youngsters who don't have too much first team involvement. That's the big concern. So now for Leeds to have built a squad of, particularly in Harrison's position in those forward areas, where there's options to change the game when you need to. There are players to call upon that offer something a little bit different. It doesn't feel like you're having to say, with the greatest respect to Joe Gelhardt, who's now got a fantastic loan move. Again, he's someone that got over reliance on him at his age, which isn't really good for anyone, but he delivered. So there's not too many complaints there. But yeah, original point, delighted Harrison's staying. I think as a squad player, you're not going to get too much better than him because ultimately he's reliable.
Yeah, absolutely. Just interested to get your take as well on the transfer window as a whole for the Premier League as well. I mean, extraordinary amounts of money spent. Chelsea, I think, spending the majority of it. What did you make of it as a whole?
It's just bizarre, isn't it? I mean, up about 1:30 working on Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, I was kind of going like the Enzo Fernandez deal, sorting that, and it's kind of like this has been on the card since the start of the month. Why we're here at 1:30 in the morning after the deadline, still finalising it, and the amount of teams who say it was our number one target. Why are you confirming him at 5 to 11 then? I get circumstance and I get stuff comes into play, but some of the deals you go, and that player was always kind of available if you wanted them. Yeah, I mean, from a Leeds perspective, Leeds have had one of the best windows in the Premier League. I think you kind of look, they came into it needing 3 positions. They got those 3 positions and they got them in a pretty good manner as well. They didn't kind of cheap out. They said, okay, we're going to commit. We're going to break a record. Weston McKennie's fee would be a secondary record, that type of thing. And then you've got Everton on the flip side who've done absolutely nothing. I think that's probably kind of where the Premier League is at, that teams now are knowing the cost of staying within the Premier League, that you've seen Southampton out of nowhere have plucked out a couple of big signings. Bournemouth, okay, who have now got new owners, ambitious owners who won't want to get relegated, but they're making signings. And Wolves, who were surprisingly down there, have really pulled it out and got some, Pablo Sarabia is an unbelievable signing for about 4.5 million or whatever they paid for it. So yeah, it just shows the spending power of the Premier League. You said it before, it's just that they are just on a mile above anyone else. I think there was only maybe 5 or 6 clubs in Europe outside the Premier League who spent more than 10 million on a single player. And in the Premier League, everyone bar Everton has done that. I mean, even West Ham got Danny Ings as a striking option. That it just shows where we're at, and it shows the importance of survival now and how many teams are just in the Premier League to survive rather than thrive almost. But I mean, if you're Everton or West Ham particularly, you are so worried at the moment. I mean, Everton especially, that managerial appointment was spot on, wasn't it? But you are worried. You are very, very worried compared to the optimism of those teams around you.
Yeah, and they lost Gordon as well, haven't they? I know he's not had a great season, but I mean, it's another player down, isn't it? Who could have been the difference,
Yeah, and when they got 40 million as well, you're thinking, brilliant, that is a new manager with money. You could just go, we could just reinvest all this, then great. I know Everton have kind of got the FFP worries and things like that. And to not do that, I mean, for Sean Dyche, it's a huge reliance on him to save them. Just please save them. And without adequate replacements for Richarlison, Gordon, who is by no means prolific, but as a system forward is absolutely unbelievable for his work rate. They're in huge trouble now. Huge trouble, which welcome for everyone else around them.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to the next game, it's a huge game. Sunday, Nottingham Forest away, Sunday, 2:00. I'm already getting a bit butterflies in the stomach thinking about it, because just listening to what you're saying though about the amount of money spent with other clubs, because we look at Leeds and go, fantastic, we've signed these players, we've spent this money, and then you're looking around going, oh, quite a lot of teams have, and it's still going to be really difficult to dig ourselves out. But how do you see that one going against Forest? It's really, really difficult to call, isn't it?
Yeah, I remain uncertain on Forest. I mean, they've certainly got better once they've settled into it a little bit. And by no means, I think, a trip there. I mean, they're going to look at a Leeds game and say, this is a game we have to win if we are to survive. They've really dragged themselves out a little bit. They're by no means clear, but they're in a lot better position than they were early on. I mean, we talked transfer window. It got a little bit scattergun there. I mean, the Andre Ayew's thing that's come out today is, again, another probably example of there's a lot of players there going, you don't really need them. It's overthinking a lot of things, and to a point where players who have signed this season aren't going to be in their 25-man squad now, which is just incredibly bizarre and just ridiculous for those players who came in to kind of play. it's going to be an incredibly tough one. I suppose Leeds, in a weird way, if it doesn't go out, you still have that home game against Forest, which is obviously got cancelled, didn't it, earlier in the season. That's still to come. So if it's not a positive outcome, then at least you've almost got that weird safety net of that. It's not as if you've drawn at home and then you've lost away and you've gone, right, we've picked up 1 point from 6 against another relegation rival. But yeah, you touched on it there. A massive game. And I think both teams will be confident. And I think both teams have every right to be confident going into it. And whether that becomes a cagey affair, I don't know. I don't think either team is really in their nature to become a bit cagey like that. I think they'll want to kind of go for it, want to attack, and it could become really open and expansive. I just suppose from Leeds' perspective that it's just taking the chances, isn't it? Because they'll create chances. They have done in every game really this season, maybe bar Brentford. That was a bit of a nothing affair either way. They've just got to take these chances because eventually it's going to catch up with you. And Leeds, who performance-wise had a very good January, it's just about converting those, because you look at the missed out points. West Ham, Villa, I mean, the two recent ones, you go back earlier in season games like Everton and stuff like that, absolutely should have won. You just don't want this to be another one.
No.
And again, you both will target victory, and Leeds have every chance of doing so.
I know. I mean, that is what I immediately thought of as well. Is we've burnt through a lot of winnable games already in the season, and you're looking ahead. Obviously, you've got the 2 games against Man United. You've got an away trip against Everton. Then after that, Southampton, then Chelsea. I mean, it feels like some of those games we really messed up not winning earlier in the season, particularly Villa and Everton at home. I mean, how we didn't win those at that time, it's a disgrace, really. But going forward, I mean, Wednesday, it's the old enemy, Manchester United. It's the away leg. I mean, it's a big week for Marsh, isn't it? I mean, it really is. It's a big 10 days, isn't it, really? It's 3 games, 2 against your bitter rivals. I mean, he's got to get something. I mean, it's difficult because on the one hand, I'm going, there are 3 really hard games. I mean, feasibly we could lose all 3, but in the same token, we have to get something, and I can't see him surviving if we don't get anything.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be tricky because obviously they've backed him massively in this window and they've doubled down and saying that this is the man. I think 3 points have to come from somewhere in these 3 fixtures. Leeds have to return 3 points in the next week minimum. There has to be a win, or if it's 3 draws or whatever, fine, just don't lose. But I think the more realistic one is you probably end up beating Forrest, losing at Old Trafford. Who knows the way the kind of Ellen Road game can go. I think the fixturing has made it interesting because it's almost like that first game from a Leeds perspective should set the tone then for your second game. This is incredibly rare that you get this turnaround, I think. And almost in a weird way, you're getting the harder game out of the way first, because you can kind of look at it and then you've got a very quick chance to turn it around and try and get something. And I think the Old Trafford one, that Leeds' results at Old Trafford since promotion haven't been good enough. They've been heavily beaten twice. And obviously this is Marsh's first go at it in terms of playing Manchester United. So it'll be interesting to see how he approaches that. But I think it's all about the Ellen Road game on that one, isn't it? It's not a free hit. No, I mean, I hated that term free hit in terms of away games because that nearly got Leeds relegated last season. They're treating certain games as a free hit. You've just shipped 6 goals and it all adds up. You want some competitive nature there and thinking, okay, if the signs are there, you want the confidence going into the Ellen Road game to get it. But I mean, they've really sorted it out, Man United at the moment. Really, really sorted it out. Obviously in the Carabao Cup final, really good chance for them to get to top 4. Players like Rashford and Fernandes and players like that are just in unbelievable form at the moment. And obviously Weghorst is just going to be, for this Leeds defence, slightly worrying because he's just massive, isn't he? So it could be a real problem there. But yeah, for me, it's that Wednesday. That sets the tone for Sunday then. And I don't know, the way Marsh is, the way the team is and stuff like that, if it gets a little fiery and stuff like that, I think that could only benefit Leeds going into an Ellen Road tie on the Sunday with a crowd. Rowdy as they always are, but particularly when Man United are in town, that if there's like a flashpoint in that last 10 minutes on the Wednesday, I just see that Sunday being one of the games of the season. It's just going to be unmissable for anyone to watch. But yeah, the Wednesday, try and get something, but absolutely set a tone to try and get the confidence and something going for that Sunday game.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing, I mean, that's cropped into my head as well is if it doesn't work out for Marsh, obviously really hoping it does and we can get going under him. But looking at it objectively, if you're a top class manager and you're out of work and you're looking at that Leeds squad, I mean, it's quite attractive now, isn't it? I mean, I can imagine we'd get some top class applicants going for it if it didn't work out with Marsh.
Yeah, I think, for Clara, I think Marsh has got a long time still, unless they panic towards the end of the season, particularly this, like, they could lose these next three, but you can't effectively spend 75 million with a Weston McKennie deal and then go, actually, no, 2 weeks later, we don't want to do this. I think it's just probably a more general point of where Leeds are at now. The kind of 1 in, 1 out system before was, the squad and the reliance on youth players, which is obviously great for their further development. But for the here and now, you do need some quality depth in there. I think Leeds have it. Probably the one area they're lacking is that right centre-back role, which you imagine Ayling is now the backup, obviously after Diego Llorente left, which is a deal that worked for all parties, so you can't really complain too much about it. But it's just probably a status of where they're at. And obviously going forward as well, with the new ownership that will probably be coming in the summer, and the fact that this window is probably an indicator of where they're going to go going forward. It's an absolutely attractive job for anyone. I think just the status of that club and working in the Premier League, if still there and things like that, it's all the factors there for someone. And to be fair to Marsh now, this looks like a Marsh team now. This is that midfield, especially the kind of base of it. Rocker, who's a very good footballer, Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams, who play together internationally and know each other inside out, and the system that they want to play and stuff like that. It looks like a Marsh team now. So I've got high hopes for the second half of the season. This could come back and backfire. And that's beyond these 3 games. Even if they lose 3, I think long term, it just looks like they're starting to get it together. And he's done okay with a base squad that probably still wasn't where he wanted it in the first half. So I've got hopes for the second half for Leeds. I think they've definitely got reason to be positive after January. And how many times have we been able to say that from Leeds in the past?
Exactly. Very few, very few. Great stuff. Well, if you've enjoyed the video, please give us a like and don't forget to subscribe for more Leeds content. Tom, thank you very much for joining us, mate. And we'll speak to you again soon.
No problems.